He's young, 69 years old, the young Pope. He's handsome, and everyone in the world says he's good-natured. His name is Robert Francis Prevost. But you, my little darlings, will call him Leon 14. Leon X in 10 points for you. I've done my research. It's 1 a.m. The first person in the comments who tells me the video is poorly edited, I'll trash him, okay? So you like, you subscribe, you help me. I've done my research for you. I can't take it anymore. I want to sleep. But what I saw, you're going to love. This guy isn't calibrated like you. He's done everything. We look at his biography, we see that there's nothing extraordinary, then we read 2 or 3 lines, and then after, we're completely lost. There's everything. Let's keep it short for you. His mother is of Spanish descent. His father is of French-Italian descent. He was born in America in Chicago and later, as we'll see, he would become Bishop of Chiclayo in Peru, which means he speaks French, Spanish, Italian, English, and then, for good measure, he reads Latin and German. He's a student, he studies mathematics, philosophy, and then he also develops a little artistic side, a sensitivity like that. And then, he enters the orders young and there, he specializes in theology. To put on a good face, he gets a doctorate in canon law and then there, he says no, in fact, it's more the mission and he goes to be a missionary in Peru. In Peru, he is responsible for training, so he becomes a professor of morality, patristics, canon law. Morality, patristics, that has nothing to do with it. He decides that in fact, no, it's the poor who interest him. So he becomes a parish priest if he's interested in pastoral work and he's in the poor suburbs. Well, then he's called back by his order to America and there he becomes responsible for initial training. He becomes vicar and he becomes provincial and then all of a sudden, he's named archbishop and he returns to Peru, archbishop. There he is named cardinal of an apostolic administrator of the great port of Callao. And then the Pope notices him, you bet. And appoints him, well, responsible for the dicastery of bishops. The guy has more than a CV. He simply took the list of all the possible positions in the church and he did them all. I don't know. I just do my YouTube like that in my corner, it's already complicated. But that's maybe the only thing he's missing, by the way. In addition, he has a good character, he has everything. We'll see what happens. I already love him. I think we all saw it when he spoke to us yesterday while giving us his first blessing at Bitbarby. He is the image of a humble, discreet, peaceful man. That's what everyone says. The newspaper La République called him the least American of the Americans, which in fact, in the mind of this newspaper, meant that it contrasted with the rough and abrasive character of certain leaders. So in fact, everyone agrees that he was also chosen for his human qualities and his capacity for dialogue, synthesis, roundness, and gentleness. I think the cardinals perceived that there were tensions within the church that needed to be calmed between different sensitivities and they appointed a man of dialogue. Which is wise and we'll see, but we're happy. 3. He's an Augustinian, a religious. So that, I'm surprised because the newspapers don't insist on it. It's as if they never talked about me without saying that I was 2015. I don't want to say anything because that colors the guy. It means he belongs to an order that he has a spiritual framework. Say poverty, chastity, obedience. It means he was formed in the rule, that he has a mystical life behind the importance of prayer. The Augustinians, you may not know them but in France the closest to them is the Abbey of Grace. It's the Premonstratensians if that means anything to you. The Augustinians can be demanding in terms of liturgy, in terms of community life but with this form of tenderness. Finally there is Saint Augustine who is behind it. Saint Augustine, it gives you an elevation of soul, a dilexio, a tenderness. I like him more and more, eh. 4. He's a man of the field. He's not a doctrinal profile. He's a pastoral profile like Francis with one exception, eh. It was said that he studied philosophy and mathematics before entering the order. And when he entered the order, he did a doctorate in canon law on the role of the prior in the rule of Saint Augustine. So if you like, he's still an intellectual too, given how he was a professor, but he chose to serve the poor. He left America to serve the poor. He was in the poor suburbs. He was there. He was at the front. So that's a quote, EH 2024. A bishop is not supposed to be a prince sitting in his kingdom, but he must be humble, close to the people he serves, walking and suffering with them. Hands in the mud, as Pope Francis said, a pastor who breathes the smell of his sheep. It's still, I don't know where they got it, but you bet he was read quickly. The Guarinos saw this guy, they said, yeah, that's him, eh. Well yeah. 5. He decided to call himself Leo X. So Leo X, you might not say anything except that it's after Leo X, but Leo X happens to be one of my favorite popes. No, but I swear I'm not making it up for the video, The guy is opening a fan club. I'll sign right away. Leo X is a late 19th century pope who is both hyper-modern and hyper-classical. So, hyper-pronounced social commitment. He's the one who makes social doctrine. Rerum novarum is Leo X, but at the same time, he's the one who refounds the studies of OMISM, who puts the prayer to Saint Michael the Archangel at the end of the Mass to protect the Church from the attacks of the devil. It's him, at the same time, on the other side, who tells the Church of France that it must modernize its policies by getting closer to the Republic. So Leo X, it's a whole hyper-modern, hyper-classical program. Leo X, he exuded intelligence. Yeah, we'll see. 6. He's neither conservative nor progressive. He's both. He's Catholic, so obviously, when journalists see that, they're in PLS. They don't understand because you always have to be one or the other. So, you could say, he's progressive because he's very close to the poor and he's a truly grassroots pastor. He's also conservative because, well, like Catholics, because on questions of traditional morality, he's very progressive because he has a sensitivity for migrants, for the poor, and since he's a grassroots pastor, he understood that your life was complicated. So, well, there you go, he'll be flexible. But on the other hand, on LGBT issues in front of journalists in 2012 in Joyer, he openly showed his concern for practices, I quote, contrary to the gospel. Regarding the ordination of women, they were rather reserved. So ladies, before firing off red bullets in the comments, it's still him who has done the most to put women in positions of power, as we will see. So, in fact, he is at the center, and that's probably what the church needs right now. I like him. I think I could invite him onto my channel. He's there in the editorial line of Love Will Conquer. His motto, by the way, is Evil Will Not Triumph. It's somewhat compatible. 7 is a man who is used to government. He is a man accustomed to power, and that's good because, according to what is being said at the Vatican, the Deisters would need to be reassured. He was superior of his order, he was a bishop, he was vice president of the Peruvian Episcopal Conference, he was at the head of the dicast responsible for bishops. He is a man of mediation. In Peru in particular, there were a lot of revolutions and it is said that one of the last radical left governments had asked to be received by him and by another to find solutions for a peaceful transition through him. So he is a man of mediation, a man of dialogue, and finally, frankly, it is difficult to find tasks for him on his CV. So if there is one that I keep for later, but for the moment it is still a flawless 8. He was the doctor of the church, the minister of bishops, the bishop of bishops, it was he who appointed them, it was also he who was supposed to manage complicated cases. So it may not mean anything to you because you say well the Vatican, but it is interesting to see how he managed his dicastery. For example, okay, he doesn't seem to be in favor of the ordination of women. Well, I have that. I tend to agree, but at the same time, it was he who put 3 women in positions of great responsibility at the head of almost the dicastery. That was unprecedented. Finally, it was also him for the appointment of bishops who wanted the Christian people to be consulted more. And I would have a hard time agreeing with him because, well, if we ever want to have bishops with profiles that correspond to the expectations of the people, we must consult the people. Without, he says, making the church a democracy that it is not. So it is always the voice of the happy medium. I find that super interesting. It sends out good vibes, EH9. So I kept the little stain on his CV for you. I'm sorry, there's one for later. Now we continue. He wants to pursue synodality. He spoke about it on the balcony of St. Peter's. Synodality, we always have a little trouble understanding what synodity means. I remind you, it's about reflecting on the way the church wants to govern itself, which is a mix between an experiment in democracy but framed by tradition and under the control of apostolic succession. No one has understood anything anymore, but basically it means making everyone happy by trying to govern well. Here, once again, it's the voice of the happy medium. So he wants there to be more dialogue between the local churches, the universal church in Rome. He wants there to be more consultation, but at the same time, he was also the one who opposed the approach of the bishops in Germany, who he thought were going too far. So, Leo XIV promotes authentic synodality, that is, a broad dialogue within the Christian people without falling into a parliamentary model that would dilute the sacramental structure and doctrinal unity of the church. We don't really know what all that means, but basically it means that it's both in line with Pope Francis but in a way that reassures everyone. I think that's what it means. And anyway, Chineseness, it's true that it's the big issue of the 21st century. I keep saying it, but the church needs to be reformed in its governance. That's obvious. 10. Gray areas in the management of sexual abuse scandals. There's a case when he was superior of Augustine, which was poorly managed. Not only was it mismanaged, but the guy also started abusing again afterward. So, it was the 2000s, so we could say that the rules weren't yet absolutely strict. And then a case that is mismanaged. Maybe there were plenty of others that were well managed. Still, this one was mismanaged and that's a stain. Then there's a second case, but this one isn't very clear. When he was a bishop in Peru, nuns who denounced abuses said that he didn't help enough, but then the diocese reacted by saying that he had helped well, and so on. So this one seems to be less clear. In any case, there's a stain in this case. When he was superior of Augustine, he explained it to the conclave. And if he was ever named pope on that, it could simply mean that these explanations were deemed sufficient because otherwise he wouldn't be pope. However, it should be noted that this will now be a point on which not only was he already expected, but now he will be downright expected at the turn. So we pray for him, and then it's true that when we commit abuses, zero tolerance. He was elected in less than 2 days. Through his parents, he's a Westerner. He was able to reassure both the Americans and the Europeans, but he worked all his life in Peru. The African cardinals of Asia and South Africa saw in him one of their own. You're going to love him. Well, if you already have your little heart starting to beat for this new pope, you put it in the comments. Me, children, it's 1 a.m. Good night everyone. Love will conquer. And you subscribe, you do whatever you want. Let me sleep. Love will win. Long live Pop.